Hi, I'm Bruce Williams, CEO of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce, and this is Chamber Chats, as always, coming to you from the podcasting studios at Czech Television. I'd like to begin, as always, that I live and work in the ancestral territories of the Lekwungen-speaking Coast Salish nations, the Songhees and the Esquimalt. This program is made possible through the support of Island Savings, a division of First West Credit Union, and C-SPAN Victoria Shipyards. I want to do a little word association game with you right here. I'm going to say two words, and then something will pop into your mind, okay? You ready?
I'm
Oak,
ready.
Oak Bay.
Fantastic.
There, that's our response. The mayor would, of course, say fantastic, but I think people have images, Mayor Kevin Murdoch of Oak Bay and what it represents to people. If you met a total stranger and said, "Oh, hi, I'm the mayor of Oak Bay," and they would say, "Oh, Oak Bay, tell me about that place," what would you say?
I would say it's a primarily residential community near Victoria that people love. They love to visit it. They love to live here. In fact, it's one of our problems is just how much demand there is for our community
Yeah.
overall. It drives up house prices. It drives, overuse of parks and all kinds of things, but it's a nice problem to have.
Well, they're great facilities. It's a beautiful place. It's tree lined. It's all of those things. But you say that it's predominantly a residential municipality or community. Do you think that'll ever change, like down the road at some point? Is that ever going to change?
Well, I would say we're residential and recreational and educational are probably the three big areas that we service. So we're definitely primarily residential. But within Oak Bay, there's three rec centers. We have 2.5 golf courses. We have a yacht club and a marina.
Hmm.
So there's quite a bit of in terms of recreational pieces as well as parks and stuff, of course. Educationally, we have half of UVic, as well as two independent schools, GNS and St. Mike's exist here. We also then our commercial centers are small, but they're really vibrant. So there's one core village, but a number of little pocket retail and restaurants and things as well that often service local community, but are also serve the wider community as well. So it's primarily residential. It's probably not going to change much. We were fully developed in 1962. That was when the last lot was built out. So there's no space there to say, just take some blank land and change it to a big commercial center or a big industrial center. It really is all built as is. And so our changes happen incrementally within the community as it was finished in about 1962.
Hmm. I'm just trying to go through my head here. 2.5 golf courses. So you've got Victoria Golf Course, you've
Yes,
got
Uplands Golf
Uplands,
Course.
yeah.
And then we have the Henderson, the little
Oh,
pitch
right,
and putt.
that's right. One of the little unique
Yes.
things about Oak Bay, that's for sure. So,
I'm sure my parks department will criticize me for calling it a half a golf course, but it's a half a golf course.
yeah, it's a very manageable golf course for bad golfers like me. That's what it is.
Yes.
So on the business side of this, residential tax rates are lower than business taxes or industry taxes. It's 2 or 3 times the normal rate, even 4 or 5 in some places. So, how does that impact your strategic planning for those things you spoke about, the infrastructure, the schools, the services, the parks? How is it different from, say, Saanich or Langford or North Saanich that have pretty significant business and industry in their tax base?
Yeah, we're very different. In fact, every municipality, if you go through their books, are all look really differently. Langford, I would say, is essentially where Oak Bay was in about 1945. It's got lots of empty land that they're building like crazy, and they're bringing in a lot of money for that. Saanich has its unique issues being both a rural and an urban situation. So we have our own. We're primarily residential. Our pipes, because the last pipes went in the ground well over 50 years ago, most of them are close to 100 years old. We have the issue of old infrastructure and a fixed tax base. So, I guess I would just say it forces us to be excellent money managers and to manage our infrastructure effectively. And that's this term, and one of the reasons I ran for mayor was just the recognition was that we had to get on top of that. We couldn't run our municipality in a way that would be viable in the long run if we didn't really get on top of our infrastructure costs and start managing them in a way that was viable for the next, for centuries to come, as opposed to the next 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, you talk about all the stuff that's been in place for a long time. Every municipality, though, has an OCP, an official community plan.
Mhm.
Oak Bay is no exception. What are the priorities in that, and sort of the pillars, if you will, of the OCP?
Sure. Oak Bay's official community plan is very similar to what you see in most official community plans. There's a lot of discussion around, housing, housing diversity, inclusivity, environmental and climate change issues, business and commerce support, and community character. So layered on top of the official community plan, which is a more general document, we set priorities as a council. And so this council has added some additional things around things like service excellence and sustainable finances, and quality of life on top of that. Of course, COVID-19 plays havoc with all plans. So, some of the things that we were trying to do, we didn't get done, and inversely, some things that we were hoping to get done have been accelerated quite a bit through this process. So, you sort of take opportunities as they come, and those are those pieces. But yeah, our OCP isn't any. If you look at the high level goals and aspirations, you'll find a lot of similarities across the province.
Yeah, when you talk about fiscal management, right? People, when they contact any elected official, probably want to know about their taxes and they want to know what you're doing with their money and the fact that you have all of this infrastructure that's going to have to be replaced sooner than later.
Yeah.
What does that look like? Does that mean that you're in a position where taxes will have to raise significantly, or do you have reserves or reserved earnings or retained earnings, or are you in good shape for that, or will there be a tax increase?
No, we've already had significant tax increases
Okay.
over the last 3 years, 4 years, and really, without knowing exactly what we owed, we knew we had to tackle it. So I ran a very strange campaign in the last election where I said, we can't ignore this anymore. We're going to have to pay more taxes to cover those costs. And I argue it this way: if you don't, we're spending more and more money doing break fix. So we're fixing a 10-foot section of
Right.
broken 100-year-old pipe. You might spend $75,000 in overtime and call outs and damage repair and stuff on that. You can replace the whole street for a couple of $100,000, right? So, and that 75,000 is just lost. You get no added value. There's no. So we really had to switch our thinking on this to say that we've got to get in front of that and we've got to start investing. So we have not covered our entire infrastructure deficit yet. We had about a $9 million a year infrastructure deficit. If you should look at the 100-year costs, we've reduced that by about half over the last 4 years, and we're looking now at how we get to the next half. And it'll probably stretch it to take it a bit easier on people and stretch it out over maybe 5 or 6 years to kind of get to the next phase. So we can get to those pieces, which works out to about a 2% per year, 2.5% per year increase over the next 6 years to get us there. So it's not unmanageable, but it's still a significant amount of money.
So when you do all these infrastructure upgrades, there's going to be a lot of streets and roads ripped up, and residents don't like that. They don't always understand the reason for it. So how do you message that? How do you talk to people about that?
Yeah, well, I think we have a very educated and knowledgeable population in Oak Bay, and they're very aware of it. But you're right, when it's their street getting torn up, it really comes down to communication. So built into all of our capital plan has to be a really robust communication plan. So we let people know that things are coming. We let them know that they're coming up soon. We let them know coming up tomorrow. We share all of those expectations. The other part of it is we have to, manage those projects in a way that ensures they're getting done quickly, within the timeframes that you're trying to do it. Because I think what really frustrates people and what's happening now is we start a project and then, of course, because things are breaking, people get called off the big projects to work on the break fix, and that stretches out the time spans of the big project. So we can't do that. So a lot of what the work is going on now is to make sure that we're being very efficient in those big projects and tying them effectively. Yeah, it's big. I don't know if people really appreciate how much bigger it's going to be. But over the next 20 years, we'll probably be doing on average 6 to 8 times more capital work every year than we have for the last 20 years. We've gone from sort of 2 million to probably going upwards of $20 million in many years for capital projects. So,
Wow.
yeah, there's going to be a lot of things dug up, and a lot of temporary, uh, uh, yeah, discomfort while we go through that process. But it's incredibly necessary.
Yeah. With any elected official, of course, people call you, people email. The next question I have is, what do people want to say to the mayor? What do you hear when you pick up the phone, or what do you see when you open your email? Talking today on Chamber Chats with Oak Bay Mayor Kevin Murdoch. So, Kevin, people call the mayor, they email you, they want to talk about stuff. It's usually not to say, hey, you're doing a great job. They usually want to talk about something or they have an issue. What do you hear mostly when people get in touch with you?
Well, people do sometimes say, "Hey, you're doing a great job," and it's always nice to have those comments. But it's been interesting. It's been when COVID hit, it changed the conversation a lot. For most people, it's small things, right? It's issues around noise or concern about parks or little things in the community. We're very tied to the community. It's a small town. But with COVID, it's changed a lot because a lot of it has been, a lot of the focus we've spent. I think we've had 400 or 500 changes to our just programming and things over the last year and a half, mostly Parks and Rec, but everything from the frequency of cleaning public toilets all the way through has been impacted. And so a lot of the calls we get now are public health related. People either feeling that things aren't safe enough or are too restrictive or are those sorts of pieces as we've tried to adjust our operations to meet those needs. So I think that's been really different, has been that piece of it. We've worked pretty hard though, and one of the opportunities we saw in this was we couldn't do like through public engagement. Normally you'd go out and you're meeting with people and you have people in chambers, and because there's been none of that allowed, we've had to really up our game in terms of our other tools. So they won't replace. As we get back to normal, we'll have the in-person, but we've added a dedicated portal at connect.oakbay.ca. So that's all of our projects and public engagement pieces go on there, so people have a one-stop place to go for all of that. We've worked a lot better at building internal capacity for things like surveys, so we can do online pieces and social media and things. And we've moved a lot of new tools like development trackers and other project specific pages up on our website. So if people want to know about what we're doing, they don't have to call. They can just go online and have a look at that and have the real-time information. So I think probably that's actually had a pretty positive impact. We've had a lot less of the sort of day-to-day little calls and more of the more substantive type conversations.
Yeah. I've heard someone describe Oak Bay as a place where old people go to live with their parents. And when you take a look at the demographic of what Oak Bay is in general, and as our population ages, as people like you and me, frankly, are getting older, how does that change those priorities for the municipality? What sort of things are factored in when you see the aging population grow?
Yeah, so I've heard that too, Bruce, that joke. I think it's as old as Oak Bay is.
As old as Oak Bay, yeah, that's right.
Demographics are always changing. I think, one of the big issues is we have to make sure that we're providing appropriate housing options and for different age groups. One of the real gaps we have right now is there isn't places for people as they're aging to move laterally in their neighborhoods. So like if you want to move out of your 3-bedroom single family house into a little condo or a townhouse, we don't have many of those options within neighborhoods. So that's one of the pieces that we're really working on. But it also changes things like accessibility. There's obligations. So if we're doing active transportation discussions, things as simple as curb cuts so people can get wheelchairs or scooters off of the corners to cross roads becomes a thing. And again, wasn't built for most of the last century. And so we're doing retrofitting at a massive scale just to make sure that those sort of fundamental aspects of accessibility and transportation are viable for all ages within the community as well.
I guess, the conversations about affordable housing and workplace housing are happening across the province, if not across the country. Is that necessarily something that's in the purview of what Oak Bay does, though? Is affordable Oak Bay housing an oxymoron?
Well, I will say it's a very desirable place that people want to live. We don't have, most people have moved to Oak Bay because they want to live here, and that does drive up the value of the land, just supply and demand, that simple. But we do have the opportunity of providing a number of different housing options. And so affordable housing is absolutely within our mandate to try and find. That might look a little different here than it does in some jurisdictions, but I think the range of types of housing, one of the big things that we have coming up over the next couple of decades is what do we do? We have a lot of older rental stock that exists in Oak Bay, and it does not have any, as it ages out, those are very hard to replace because they're actually quite affordable. The average rents for rental 1 bedrooms in Oak Bay is relatively low compared to the region because the buildings have all, been fully mortgaged and amortized over their time. So if people replace those buildings, that's going to cause a big problem for us as to how do we provide other affordable housing units within replacement buildings that replace those units. So it's not coming up right away, but it's the next council, we're starting the foundation work to look at the corridors, the villages, to look at that density and what will be allowed, because one of the things we can do, frankly, is provide a lot of exact certainty about what can and can't be built, because the big expense for development is often the uncertainty and the carrying costs for land. So if we can say this is what you're allowed, it's very straightforward. We'll have once we've agreed upon that, it's a quick turnaround and those carrying costs. That's in many ways the best way we can address the cost factor of these buildings, and it's true for infill as well. So that's part of the other pieces. We're trying to give some clarity around what housing forms are allowed and where they're allowed. So when the applications come, they get dealt with in weeks or months as opposed to years.
Yeah. Well, when people think about tourism in this region, they think, oh, they're going to the Inner Harbor, they're coming on a cruise ship, they're going to Butchart Gardens, but there actually is a tourism organization in Oak Bay, and we're going to talk about that next. Kevin Murdoch is the mayor of Oak Bay, and he's with us on our chamber chats today. So, Tourism Oak Bay is an organization that people may not know about. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so we have a tourism Oak Bay.
Yeah.
So out of the provincial allows for a specialized tax within hotels to pay for local promotions. So Oak Bay Beach Hotel, there was Oak Bay Guest House, which until very recently also a bed and breakfast that paid into it. And those two, yeah, they provide a small percentage of their room rates that go into that. Oak Bay Beach Hotel is unique, actually. It actually funds both the Oak Bay tourism and the Greater Victoria tourism pieces. We recognize that we are part of their whole as well as just local. But they provide yeah, awareness and draws for people both locally, regionally, and internationally to draw people to the area.
In fact, Oak Bay Beach Hotel was just named the top hotel in Canada by Condé Nast Travelers. So that must be something that the community can kind of rally around and take pride in and say, yeah, we got the best in Canada right here in Oak Bay. But people talk about that stuff, right?
They do, and boy, it is spectacular. If it's, I'm sure you've been there, Bruce,
Yep.
to just go sit in the pool down by the water, and uh, I mean, it's being number one is pretty impressive. It actually made it just yesterday I think announced that it was the number 19 hotel anywhere in the world.
Yeah,
So
it's pretty
yeah, pretty
fantastic.
spectacular. Number one in Canada. And it is a real destination for many of us, including the little pizza restaurant they've got there going
Oh,
now,
yeah.
Faro, and
Faro, it's amazing. We go there all the time. I've never
yeah.
actually been in the pool. Amanda's been in the pool, but I haven't been in
Oh,
the pool.
you have to go in the pool,
I know.
Bruce.
I've heard that I should do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the snug is still the snug, right? It's still in the back
Yeah.
at the Oak Bay Beach Hotel,
Yeah, but
and
there's many wonderful little pocket restaurants and cafes and retail stores. One of the things that really draws people into the village is the galleries. So
Mhm.
there's quite a number of really nice professional galleries for artworks as well. So yeah, there's lots of. It's not big, but it draws a lot of people.
Yeah, we all of us know about the penny farthing, which was sort of the first property in this region by the Victoria Pub Company, and then Vis-a-Vis is right next
Yeah.
door, and all the other cafes and things that are around there. It's just a great experience to walk on Oak Bay Boulevard and go around the corner, take a look at the old fire hall, and then go for a walk through Bowker Creek Park. It's just it's a lovely experience. It's just amazing, and that park has gone through a fair amount of transformation over the past few generations too, hasn't it?
It has. We're continuing to try and rewild the creek so it has less of the concrete walls and more of the open space. Trying to expose more of it to the air, so it's part of it. So yeah, it is quite fabulous. And it's interesting from a business perspective. You talk about that. Again, what we can do as a municipality is support our business community is to make sure that our villages are sort of that feel like that, right? They feel welcome. So there's a lot of work going on, and the village plan will really have a major impact, but just small things, just the lighting. We have a light up and we keep lights up through the winters to kind of make it more inviting in the village, keeping it safe and clean and all those pieces as well. I think really attracts people to just linger in those village centers. And so there's a lot of thought and work that goes into that. We have a business improvement association as well that helps with events and with the light ups and those sorts of things as well.
Yeah, the BIA that's there. And of course, there's the whole experience of driving Beach Drive or walking Beach Drive or cycling Beach Drive. It's all just a part of the experience. But I want to start wrapping this up here. But why did you decide in the first place to run for public office? That's really not for everybody, right? You got to have thin
No,
skin. You got to have a really great understanding of a lot of things. But what drew you to public office?
it was very multifactorial. Just where I was in my life, and I had the opportunity to do some more volunteering work, and it was an election year, so I almost fell into it by accident. My grandfather was actually the Reeve, which is what
Hmm.
mayors used to be called in Oak Bay, like way back in the 50s and 60s. Um, but really, I've always enjoyed doing board work and volunteering, and Oak Bay, being a counselor in Oak Bay is essentially a voluntary position, and of all the boards you can sit on, it's one of the most fascinating, right? You get to work on everything from, well, I'm not going to go through the list, but
Yeah.
it's remarkable how many things you get to work on.
So, in the time when you were on council and then you've moved up to become mayor, what has surprised you about that role, especially in the mayor's role?
Well, there's a, I mean, I came to the mayor after being on council, so I understood the fundamentals of doing the mayors. There's a couple pieces. I was really pleasantly, especially with COVID, just the amount of time I get to spend now with my peers, with the other mayors in the region, that camaraderie, that sort of shared willingness to look at regional issues and work together on stuff has been a real, it's new and it's been a real pleasant, working relationship with the mayors in the region.
You know, there's so many of us that have been asked about running for public office, and most, like me, say, no thanks, nope, don't have the character for that, don't have thick skin for that at all. But I always have to say as often as I can to people like you, thank you for stepping up to do what you do, because it takes people like you with your determination and character to do the job and fulfill the role and do it right and be engaged and do the right thing. So thank you for doing that. We all appreciate
My
it.
my pleasure. And I got to say, I think people should look at it. I think there is a certain amount of yes, people get angry at times and things, but it's very rewarding. And I think as long as you're willing to actually listen to people, it's people aren't that angry, right? They want to be heard. They want to know that you've considered their concerns or their ideas, and you genuinely listen and you genuinely try and accommodate or address their concerns. You can't always, that's just a reality of life. I rarely have people who are actually angry, like at the end of the day, or cause me any great concern. We have conversations. We can often resolve issues, or we can get close to it anyway. And I think that's the role. That's why we have diverse councils,
Yeah.
and allow people to speak. Is that we get a chance to hear from the whole community and address those concerns. So I actually do encourage people who are interested to really consider it, because I have found it an overwhelmingly positive experience, and I think the you learn a lot about the community, and it's rarely a negative. I know you say that,
Yeah.
but it is to my mind rarely a negative.
Kevin Murdoch is the mayor of the District of Oak Bay. Mayor, thanks for your time. We appreciate it.
Bruce, it's been a pleasure as always. Have a great day.
Thank you. I'm Bruce Williams. We'll see you again for another Chamber Chat.